Yeah, absolutely excited to have Luca Fogale. I think I said that right. I'm not
Mhm.
100% certain, but man, I
You got
appreciate you
it.
taking the time. And how have things been?
Yeah, my pleasure, Matt. Everything's been good. It's been busy. Been a busy season. Busy year, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, just finished up a record, and it's all it's all done. It's out of my hands now, and a few months of touring this earlier this year, and it's been a great full year, and yeah, now trying to figure out what to do with myself. A bit of time, which is not typical. So,
Yeah, I was gonna
um,
say
yeah,
um, usually with album releases, isn't it? Like you usually finish up and you got maybe a couple weeks. In this case, it feels like you have goodness a good four-ish months.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's been funny to even wait for a week. So
yeah,
yeah, we'll see how. Talk to me in 3 months. We'll
yeah,
see
yeah.
how I'm
Definitely a
doing
little bit of anxiety setting in. I'm sure over
for sure.
time or just kind of restlessness. But I guess maybe the easiest question, the question I like to start with everybody, man, is like kind of the music you grew up listening to, music that was played in your household. I feel like that's a good barometer of the artist and kind of what influenced them.
Yeah, sure. It's I feel like I I don't know if this is a very common thing around folks who are musicians now, but we didn't really listen to music in the house when I was growing up, and um, my sister, she's older than me, and she'd kind of have the kind of classic teeny bopper stuff, and love the Hanson brothers and NSYNC, and so I'd sort of get kind of just by proxy, like whatever she was listening to. But it was it was pretty rare for us to be listening to music in the house, especially my folks. I think that both my folks grew up in Italy in like a bit more of a rural area, and so um, the sort of extent of my music growing up was I was in piano lessons when I was a kid, and we'd sing a few songs at church on Sundays. Um, and so I didn't really find music until I was kind of in my teens, and started to kind of play guitar, and I thought it was an interesting thing that was sort of new for me, and to sort of be trying to find music that I connected with, um, sort of searching things out, and trying to feel like a music fan for the first time, and so it still feels funny. I still try to force myself to find new music, but it doesn't feel like my natural state, which is just typically silence. And so, um, yeah,
Did you so kind of as you found um, music for the first time? What were you gravitating towards? Was there a certain set of artists in particular, a certain genre? Like what? It's funny. I feel like music, especially nowadays, it's like you have to be on top of every release, right? But it's such
hmm
a I don't feel like it's a very linear timeline in discovering music. So what were you what were you first gravitating towards?
the first kind of music I was sort of starting to seek out was, again, because of I had this guitar teacher who just adored music, and he really loved sort of classic blues, and so the first music I was seeking out was B.B. King and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King, and then eventually, um, more people sort of in blues adjacent genres like Nina Simone and sort of Donny Hathaway and all these sort of like all these artists that sort of um, I don't know, sort of follow a similar path and timeline. And so, and that was the first time I was ever excited about music, and mostly through guitar solos, which was a really interesting thing,
Awesome.
and listening to the voice through guitar because I wasn't singing at that time either, and just playing, and the initial thought in my mind was, oh, maybe I'll be a guitar player. That would be a fun job to have. And I was 14, 15 or something. And I still love, the classic blues because of the sort of opportunity it gave me through my teacher in order to figure out what someone was trying to express through music. I think in a way which led me to finding expression through music even later after that, and through songwriting. Yeah, so it all started there, which is it's an interesting like an origin point, and not it's not what I do now. But I spent a lot of my early musical life emulating BB King and Albert King and their guitar solos.
There's some good things to emulate, though, right?
For sure,
If you could pick one, right? I don't think you
you
could go
bet,
wrong there.
totally. I mean, talk about pure expression, right? Just a feeling communicated through an instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you found songwriting kind of after that. So I feel like most people I talk to, man, they were songwriting at like 10, 12, like really young. Um, do you feel like there was a certain, I don't know, not learning curve perhaps, but just maybe difference from somebody who had learned or started to write songs so young versus, I mean, I'm assuming you were like late teens by the time it kind of happened. Um, what was
Yeah.
that process like for you?
I would imagine there'd be a difference. Yeah. I mean, I've always, it's too bad we can't step inside someone else's mind and body for a moment to see, what songwriting looks like to them or what
Yeah.
musical expression feels like. But I would imagine so. I think that I remember being maybe 20 and I wrote a song that really caught how I was feeling in that moment. And I sort of a moment of clarity thinking like, oh, I think I understand what music is supposed to be for. I remember feeling like as if I understood myself in an interesting way. And I play that song over and over and really simple song. Just I bought an acoustic guitar and started to try and express myself. And I remember I caught it once. That's something that feels like almost like a conversation with a friend in a way. And but yeah, I wonder how finding it so late, not so late, but late relative to some other musicians, shaped my writing in a way where um, it's still mysterious. And I'm sure it's to all people, but it's still so mysterious to me where on earth the song comes from, and how it takes shape and how we can sort of cultivate an idea that's been sitting in us for decades, and I'm still so fascinated by it.
Is it so even now, like, you've been releasing music, I guess, for close to a decade, I think.
Yeah, for
How do
sure.
you like even in that time frame, how has your approach to writing and your approach to just making music changed?
Good question. I don't know if it has. I man, I'll tell you. Every time I make a record, I think, oh, this one's going to be a lot easier
Yeah.
because I know a lot more about the process now, and I have all the gear I could need, and it's still so funny to sort of navigate through that experience of creating music that seems to match a feeling. I think that I've always been sort of an ideas first person in regards to lyrics and tone and the theme, and so music for me is always secondary. At least the recording of it and the performance and the instrumentation and even the melody, or it's always a secondary thought to the idea, and so it's almost as if I'm reacting when I'm recording it, and so it's always sort of, yeah, trying to match those tones with these very I don't know, not kind of non-physical ideas, and putting something down to on digital or tape, whatever it is that captures that. And so I feel like I'm as confused as I've ever been about how to do that. And somehow I always finish something. So
Uh,
um,
well, when you're recording, are you more of a, it feels like nowadays there's this like turn towards very analog recording, trying to do it in a take. Are you doing it that way, or are you kind of layering sounds back in through production and going that route?
a lot of both. I'm definitely trying um, to do less. Um, sort of capture more in a moment. And I think where that might be the main difference, actually. That at the outset I was trying really hard to make everything perfect and perfectly match the vocal to what I heard in my head and instrumentation. And now I'm kind of more interested in if something felt right in the moment, then that's valid and that has value. Um, and so trying to do less and trying to labor over things less, because I feel like there is a certain point where things don't. Uh, there's nothing more being communicated. It's more just doing it for recording's sake. And so I think both for the integrity of the music and also for my own sanity, I record less these days than ever.
That's funny. I think yeah. There just comes more. I don't want to call it authenticity because I'm not trying to say that other music is inauthentic because of how it's like layered or anything, but you just kind of feel it more in different ways, and that's kind of, especially for me at least, I really appreciate that in this space. Is like you could hear those little, you know, imperfections, and that is like an odd connection, I guess, for me. So I guess kind of before we get into the upcoming album, you have some singles out ahead of it. I think my favorite one off of the ones you have out so far is one called Begin. And
Thank
I
you,
would
man.
just love to hear kind of the meaning behind it and the feelings that maybe just evokes within you kind of thinking about it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's I appreciate that. That's my favorite as well. It was the first song I wrote for this batch of recordings, and I feel as though the scope of the writing of the album sort of feels like it feels pretty linear in regards to sort of climbing out of something, a bit of a pit, of sort of the usual tropes of purposelessness and self-consciousness and doubt and all kinds of things. And so that one, while it's sort of wallowing in all that, it feels like a very true representation of where I was in that moment. And so this song is it's basically just about wondering how much of myself I could start over, how much I could sort of wake up in a day and leave behind everything in the past. Um, and that theme sort of carries throughout the album and evolves in a way that I think ends up in a place that has a bit more resolution, but I think my favorite thing about that song about Begin is that it doesn't resolve. It's sort of just it's sort of left hanging, and which is a feeling that I know so well in my life that you get to the end of a day or a season or a year, and there's still that question mark. And I think my instinct is always to resolve everything and make and to create some sort of hopeful bent on the end of a song. That one, for some reason, I left it with the kind of at the cliff's edge, and it felt really real to me. And um, it's easy for me to remember what that feels like, even if I'm not in that moment right now. Um, so just about, yeah, questions about starting over, questions about how crystallized everything is, and how much we are, I don't know, flexible in a way to change ourselves in a way that's going to be better for us and for this world, and sort of reevaluate who we are. Um, Also, sort of, honoring that there is value in every moment of this life as long as we keep trying. And yeah, that's what I would say about
Yeah,
that one.
it's.
Yeah,
I'm glad you kind of mentioned how like I think I had that same feeling going away. Like it was kind of left unanswered and very like um, untidy, I guess, kind of at the end, right? Like, and as people, it feels like we want these nice, clean cut ends to things, right? Like to leave those questions definitely brings about a bit of anxiety and a bit of yeah, feeling like wondering of purpose for sure. And that yeah, I'm glad that it was done on purpose because yeah, I definitely felt that kind of coming away from that song as well. Uh,
well, thanks for listening, man. It means a lot.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
So the album coming out called Challenger. I think it comes end of January next year.
in January 30th, I believe. Yeah.
What kind of you just without going too far into it, kind of like themes can we expect? Is it going to be more of these self exploration type themes, or what other stories can we expect?
Yeah, mainly sort of exploring what the self is. I think that's always been where my interest is laid. Yeah, again, sort of expanding on what I was just mentioning about Begin, that I wonder so much, especially, getting older and wondering what it is that makes me feel the way that I feel, who I am, who I've become, and how much of that I have agency over, or any of us have agency over the things that we have in our head, or the things that have transpired in our life, what's happened to us. I do wonder about how much can we transcend of the things that have sort of shaped us, if we have that desire. And I've woken up a lot of mornings and just wondered to myself, what would it take to feel 1% more whole, or more happy, or more purposeful, or more driven, or more sort of aligned with the things that I love about this world. And I don't know if I wake up um, with a lot of optimism, or with a lot of drive, or with a lot of purpose in this life, and if I ever really have, but it's something that I want for myself. And so I wonder so much about how much of myself can I, you know, modulate in a way that is going to allow me to be someone who can better show up for myself and better show up for my partner, my friends, my family, my community, this world. And so there's so many questions that inside the album that, a lot of go unanswered in the way that they do in regular life. But it's mostly about that exploration of I love I love being alive. I know that in my life. It's not always, I don't always feel that way, but in my best moments, I really do. And so how do I honor that in the best way? And I think that is to keep trying, to keep evolving, to keep changing. The best way to sort of honor the time that I have here and not to allow myself to only be one version of myself that has been shaped by my past. Um, yeah.
I mean, yeah, the idea of like waking up right and not feeling driven and not feeling like always happy or positive, and yeah, kind of speaking to the past and how those things shape us. Yeah, I mean, I think those are things that certainly I go through on a regular basis, and I would imagine most other people do as well. And it is kind of interesting, right? The idea that maybe we aren't always those things, but finding ways to kind of like you said to build towards to give that extra 1% to finding what makes you driven or makes you happy, or to be purposeful in that space. I think yeah, it does a lot to, I don't know, maybe bring us together a little bit, or understand the human condition a little more, because it's very easy to look around and see other people, maybe more seemingly more driven than you, or seemingly better in other ways, and you're never ever getting that whole picture by any stretch of the imagination.
Of course. I think, yeah, that's where it becomes scary too, where we think that for some reason anything that we're doing, in any arena of life is too far behind. Um, Whereas, as long as we're here, there's so much time to, you know, keep 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 trying and keep evaluating and keep starting over. And I get caught up in all kinds of, different modes of comparison, both with, you know, colleagues or even versions of myself that in the future that I thought I would be or something. And, as we all do. And And so yeah, I think that's the scary part about being able to see everyone and see everything that we see, especially, thinking about social media. It's the reason why I can't spend that much time on it. Uh, it's just because I don't think that's the way. I think that we need to just kind of understand, like, I'm trying so hard to understand who I am, myself, and less than sort of become everything. I sort of want to become more myself, if that makes sense. And recognize that I am not all things, and that I will only, you know, that there are a few things that I maybe can do well. And so to sort of grow into those things, as opposed to doing everything, which I think that there is this culture um, of sort of self-improvement that seems to ask someone to be everything, and every part of your life to be sort of optimal. And that's not what I chase at all, because I did for a while. And it left me feeling sort of hollow and as not enough, in a big way. And so um, I'm just looking to become more myself, and do the things that I think I do best, to do those even better. Yeah, at this, with the fine balance of not asking too much of myself in a day. You
I
know,
think yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of things there, that like obviously the social media piece, right? Like how can we become more of us when we are constantly inundated with others, right? And taking that time to disconnect is insanely hard at times, especially, I mean, as an artist, I guess, it feels like nowadays you guys are required more and more to be, apart from artist, musician, and everything else you have going on in your life, you need to be, part-time influencer or
yeah,
social media expert. And to be able to keep oneself through that is, it's a hard process. Like even for me, somebody who's you know, I don't want to call it chronically online, but I have a very big social media presence, obviously, and it's such a weird space. Like, um, constantly wondering, like, and dealing with imposter syndrome and feeling like, is this the space I belong in? And they're just hard spaces to navigate, and being able to take that time to disconnect and really be with yourself is it's scary at times and weird and uncomfortable, um, but one that, yeah, I think we all need to do. So I guess, yeah, you know, kind of you alluded to a little bit. So your relationship with social media is one that of necessity, as opposed to want, I assume.
A little bit, I think with a few exceptions where um, I noticed that I really like um, doing little live sessions because that feels so close to me, like the closest version of real life to me through the cell phone or through the computer that where you can't overlabor it. You're sort of just like a conversation now where you have to be present because that's what's happening. And so if social media was all, I mean, I don't think it'd be good if all social media was live streamed all the time, but I think that those little moments of um, really being in real time, that's the sort of thing that I appreciate. Where it's the easiest time to recognize that the other person on the end of whatever you're giving is a real person, um, and that I'm not sort of jockeying for engagement or for anything. It's just sort of whoever shows up, just like a show. And it's one of the reasons I love, touring so much is because the show is such a sacred space of present time where whatever happens in that moment, that's an individual moment in an individual space and it'll never be recreated. And I get a good majority of that when uh, the odd time that I'll sort of do a little live stream, play some songs for people and answer a few questions and feels really real compared to I don't know, trying to figure out how to be engaging in a digital space, which I even down here. I mean, a lot of my time. This is where I kind of record my most of my music, and a lot of my time spent here is so quiet, and it's a lot of wondering, a lot of like sitting without making any music, and so to try to represent that in a social media post would be profoundly boring. And
Right.
so, um, yeah, a lot of it is a necessity, but I do remind myself often that everyone who is engaging with anything is a real person, and so whenever I um, put anything into the world that is received, it's always a great honor. But um, even if it just it's a little clip of music, which typically that's my social media is just a little performance. Um, to know that someone's listening is always a great gift and more than I expect. And so um, yeah,
I think I've done. I mean, I've done a handful of lives at this point, and it's like, for me especially, like, I get past that initial, like, is anybody going to show up situation, and and then usually kind of settle into to yeah, probably the I don't want to call it the truest form of myself online, but like I do feel like I've done an okay job at trying to be just like face value. This is, kind of who I am. Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, the lives are an interesting space, for sure, and it kind of speaks to, like, it reminded me a little bit of, I had a conversation, goodness, a while ago with somebody kind of about validation in terms of, social media and being an artist. And you're right, that even if it's just one person, two people, like, that connection means more than you probably realize, in the sense of, like, um, as an artist you could probably get a little bit, what's the word, I don't want to call it like numbed out to it, but like, you receive validation in a big way, and you start to just view that as normal, even though two or three people kind of sitting with you and having a conversation is what more than what most people would get in a day, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a very, very interesting space, and one that I don't definitely don't envy from an artist standpoint, where you're trying to make something true to yourself in terms of music, and then push it into a space that is, very unforgiving, it feels like.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Matt, as as a curator and as a listener and as like a real, a real aficionado of music, what is sort of the when do you feel most in alignment with the way that you're sort of facing and the things that you're outputting? What gives you that feeling the most?
I feel in this, so I feel most. It's interesting because like in this space, I really at this point, and kind of when I started, like I really want to make impact on people's lives, whether it's artists or people just in general. For me, the space where I feel the best doing that is videos where I'm maybe because it's kind of how I've always related music. So I've always related music to like stuff that I know already. Um, so when I do those videos of like this one, but here's like a couple of ones that you don't know, right? Those are the ones that always feel most like me, just because that's how I've always connected music in my brain, um, and being in it, and it comes very easily. So those are the ones that I feel most aligned. Everything else at times, like I've never been like I'm certainly not going to sit up here and be super critical of another person's art, right? Like if it's not for me, it's not for me, and that's okay. Or if even if I don't like love it, like that's also okay. I saw a clip of Zane Lowe kind of talking about how he can like music but not love the or like he can love the music but not like the person and still talk about it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a very interesting space in the sense like I can like a song, I can like an artist, and not have to be completely obsessed to be able to put it out in the world for somebody else to maybe love the artist, right? Um, it's a very it's still a weird space for me to like wrap my head around what I do, and this being any type of career. So it's definitely in the same space you are. I'm learning about myself every day in this space and learning about things that make me uncomfortable, things that make me feel like
Yeah,
I'm an
sure.
imposter, and trying to steer away from those things. So
Of course. Yeah. I think that's a good simple goal.
yeah,
Feels pretty realistic.
yeah.
So
Uh,
yeah,
so when I guess kind of bringing it back around here,
yeah.
when you put an album out, is there, obviously with this one, there's a ton of lead up. Will there be a bunch of anxiety kind of in lead up to it and wondering if people will listen or how it will be received? Or are you kind of, it's done, it's out there, um, how it's received is how it's received?
Yeah, good question. I think that in the past, yes, for sure, and there's still a bit of that still exists, but I think that I'm getting better. I think again as I get older, and recognize that I'm just kind of one person and it's one moment of time represented. And even though I've spent the better part of probably 2 years writing and recording and finalizing these songs, that once they are, I do feel in alignment with the sort of concept that once they are released, they don't really belong only to me anymore. And so in that sense, it gives me a bit of that. Also, it can kind of sound like a bit of a platitude or something or a cliche, but I really do believe it because I think the alternative is that I would just get obsessed with how they're received. And so I think that every time there's this sort of bubble of questions that right before something comes out, oh, is it enough? Is it is it refined? But did it capture something correctly? And then it comes out, and I have this sort of like exhale, and it doesn't matter. And I mean, I've been so fortunate in my career that nothing has ever been received badly. It's my audience is you know is small but very just very very open, very committed to I think maybe even trusting the things that I release, to giving it time, which is a very profound gift that I don't feel as though how do I put this? It feels like I'll be given grace to make a mistake if I release something that, or not a mistake, but just sort of if something is a bit different or a bit sort of off center about what someone expects, like a listener expects. I feel like I'll be given the sort of space for that to be explored and to be accepted. And it feels so much like having a conversation with a friend where you're working through something and you ask some questions, and your friend just takes a moment with that and receives it, and you know, isn't just waiting for their turn in a way. And so I think those things make me feel so secure when I do finish something. Nowadays, I feel a lot different than, I don't know, I guess almost 10 years ago when I put my first record out. How I'm perceived is not nearly as important to me as contributing something to this world that may have some value. Um, not just sort of adding to the sort of radio static of all the 100,000 songs released every day, whatever it is. I'm less concerned with that than ever, and I know that that's because I've been given the sort of gift of space and of the trust. And so this will be whatever it's going to be. I never, or not never, but I rarely expect any sort of you know big step up or big boost or whatever it is. I really do love sharing ideas with the world, and in any amount of time that I'll continue to be able to do that, I'm so happy. And so I really have a very limited expectations about what anything is going to do in regards to a traffic, um, in a traffic sense, like how many people are going to hear it, and more just that I hope that the people who hear it connect with it, and if they don't, then that's also okay, because I'll make another record and try again, sort of create a through line so many of us run in parallel with the things that we have been through in our lives and are thinking about day to day, that there is always someone that's going to connect with anything that anyone does. And so I've felt that so many times now, and having released quite a bit of music, I always feel that. I always get that feedback that someone says, yes, I feel heard in this. I feel understood in this. I feel as though this represents a small sort of portion of my life. And what a beautiful thing. And it brings me so much fulfillment to do so. And that's a kind of a long-winded way of saying that, I'm not that nervous anymore.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
be to be free of the feeling of perception of others, and kind of very much, at least from my vantage point, feels like very concerned with the perception of yourself, is like a place I strive to get to on a regular basis. I'm very
And
outside that
I'll
space.
be striving at it forever too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hear you.
So yeah, I mean, I think you're right on a lot of spaces to be able to just contribute something that feels like it has value in any way, shape, or form matters. At least, I mean, to me, and for sure for you, obviously. I think to one of my favorite questions to ask. So, do you have any regrets or any opposition to doing self-titled work? So, like, do you wish you had ever like chosen like a stage name? This is my favorite question to ask people who are just like
Yeah,
self-titled artists.
yeah. I've thought about it a lot. It's a really good question. I've never been asked that question before, but I think about it so much, and I wouldn't call it a regret. I definitely have questions about it. I have questions about who I would be, both as a musician and as a person, if I had sort of adopted a stage name or was in a band instead, or because even still now, I'm very, when I think of myself, I think of my music. It's very much in the forefront. And so to feel that way, and then um, you know, that everything that I engage with professionally also reflects on my legal name. And the only name I've ever been called in my life. From being a kid until now, it's odd for sure. But I feel like it's given me this alignment with my songs that I may not have had, where like I've placed so much importance on the ideas to be true to myself. I wonder if I had named myself, you know, any number of
Right.
names, or I wonder if I'd feel that. It's sort of the antithesis of that. Have you read the War of Art? the kind of classic.
Art of War?
No, sorry, they've the it's the play on that title.
Oh, I haven't.
It's Stephen Pressfield, I think, is the author, and it's essentially it's talking about being a professional in your art, and there's this sort of a long portion of the book talking about separating yourself, like your sort of ego, from your art, and how professionals do this. Whereas over the years, I'm getting more and more entrenched in who I am through music and through my, again, through my name. So it's sort of rejecting that. And it started by accident. I only read that a few years ago. And so I think that in being so intertwined with my music as a person, I think of myself more I think of my ideas with more kind of gravity than I think I would have otherwise, which might be might be a little tough for my sense of self and my mental health at times,
Right.
being in this odd career. But I think it also has given me a great challenge to try to represent so much of myself in these songs, and I can't even a single line I can't throw it away. It's sort of it has to be. I have to feel myself in it. I have to believe in it. I wonder if that's in the long run will be something that sort of burns me out. I wonder about this a lot, or if it's a special opportunity to just keep reaching, to have to keep reaching deeper.
Yeah, I mean, goodness, it feels like it's funny because I've had a handful of people, who are using their legal name to as an artist, and they've all talked about this inherent pressure that comes with it, and kind of a little hopeful that they had done otherwise. But yeah, I mean, for you, it feels like goodness, it's bringing out like the most authentic form of you in kind of relation to your music, and doesn't seem like a bad thing whatsoever. So
Yeah, I
I
wonder.
usually kind of wrapping up, I usually ask, what the through your discography of released music, I guess, what's the song that you're just most proud of?
You know, I would say I've really fallen in love with like intros and outros in the last couple of years, and so my last record, I think it's technically an EP. It's called Run Little Light Calls. Um, it was only 6 songs, and then kind of right before I went to mix and master, I wrote an intro and an outro for it. And those are still my two. And I wrote them like really fast and had to record them really fast. And so it was like a bit of an impulse for me. And I don't really work that way. But I think because of that, those two still feel like they have a lot of life in them. And so the intro is called To Run and the outro is called Keeping Anything Safe. And those 2 songs I still think about and I feel very proud of. And I think in this moment, those are my 2 favorites. And we'll play them live sometimes and use them as ways to get into like a bit of a flow state on stage and to feel excited about them, which is you know uh, 2.5 years later now, it feels good to feel that way, which is not normal for me. So
Yeah,
I'd say those two would be my
amazing.
favorites. Yeah.
And then, obviously, I live my life in music curation, so I always
Hmm.
ask, a song or an artist that you've, personally really been into recently.
Mm. Seeing Olivia Dean behind you, that's something I've spent quite a,
Yeah.
her songs I've spent a lot of time with, and I just think that she's caught a feeling that is feels very unique and very rare in a moment like this. And I've listened to her songs, and I've just been loving every moment of it. Who else? Honestly, it's been quite a season of not listening and more creating in silence. And so I'll leave it at Olivia Dean. I think she's amazing. And so,
Perfect. Yeah,
yeah, I'll leave that
I
there.
couldn't agree
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
And then yeah, usually I just leave the end to talk to us about what's coming up next. What can we obviously the album, but what else we have on the horizon here.
yeah. Well, January 30th. I mean, speaking of Horizon, the next song is called Horizon. It's coming out
Amazing.
in like 2 weeks. And so, which is a great little segue. That comes out October 10th. Doing a small tour in Canada just to sort of play through the album songs one time solo before the album comes out. Uh, so kind of recreating the songs as they were written, um, and So yeah, going to get to play this in November, which I'm excited for. And then some international touring in 2026. Going to be in the States a little bit, and then Europe a bunch. And so maybe see you in Pennsylvania, I
Yeah,
hope.
that'd be
But
sweet.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking time out of your morning, and
Appreciate
yeah, I
you,
can't
man.
wait to hear the album.
Thanks, man. Thanks for your time today.